60 seconds or less, I'm going to show you some problems with Christianity.
All right, well, let's see what you got.
Christians will have you believe that Jesus was both man and God. Now, there are a few problems with that in Scripture. For example, in Deuteronomy 24:16, we learn that one cannot sacrifice themselves as a man for the sins of another.
So in the context of this passage, what is being referred to is the notion that in ancient Israelite court systems, the parents were not to die for the sins of the children, and the children were not to be put to death for the sins of their father, but each one would be put to death judicially for their own sin. This has nothing to do with the cross, and this has nothing to do with some universal principle that one should not die for the sins of another.
This is also echoed in Psalms 49:7, in which states, "No man can die for the sins of another."
So in the context of this passage, what is being talked about is the question of why do the wicked prosper, but the righteous suffer? And part of one of the talking points of this passage is that despite all of the wealth and treasures that the wicked have, they cannot redeem death or buy off death. This is not about dying for the sins of another person. This is about the fact that death comes to all and that the wicked will not escape it. So take comfort in the notion that the wicked will die and they will leave their treasures here and will not be able to take them into the afterlife. And it is God, in fact, who will redeem, who will buy off the righteous in Sheol. That is the point of this passage. It has nothing at all to do with sins.
We also learn in Isaiah 40 that God can't die. He is immortal. Then in 1 Timothy 6, it gets even clearer and says that God is immortal, cannot die.
You know, the same people who said that God can't die are also the same people who said that God will and did die. So perhaps their understanding is a little more nuanced.
So if one man cannot forgive the sins of another through his death and God can't die, did Jesus die because he's not God? Or did he forgive the sins of someone else because he's not man? What's the problem here?
Strawmanning the biblical authors by taking verses out of context and not talking about other relevant verses is not a problem for Christianity. In order to have good and fruitful discussions between the believer and the unbeliever, we have to understand each other. But the believer and the unbeliever both need to understand the biblical text as best as possible in order to be able to understand each other and have good and fruitful dialogue. So I would encourage everyone to continue to do that.